Hello everyone, this video accompanies the learning module on religion and science. What I'd like to do is very briefly cover some of the areas in which religion and science have conflicted over largely the last 500 years in the Western tradition, although some of this goes back even a little farther. In terms of astronomy, for example, Aristarchus, I'll spell that for you, Tarchus, of Samos, Samos, and he lived from roughly 310 to 230 BC. He was the first one to suggest the idea that the Earth revolves around the sun. As a result of that, religious authorities destroyed his works. Copernicus picked up on the idea also. He lived from 1473 to roughly 1543. He discovered that the Earth rotates daily on its axis and that it revolves around the sun. Not the sun revolving around the Earth, as it was commonly believed. The implications of this for religious authorities was very serious in that it removed humankind, man, as the center of the universe, and undermined the idea that man is the center of things. Martin Luther, Protestant theologian, philosopher, rejected Copernicus' ideas. Luther referred to several biblical passages, Psalms 93:1, 96:10, and Chronicles 16:30, all refer to the idea that the earth is set firmly in place and cannot be used. And Martin Luther, that was evidence that the earth was the fixed center of the universe. But this reflects one of the first conflicts between religion and science. And implications of this were to bring into doubt the biblical perspective of history, the origins of Earth. Also, it meant that these scientists questioned whether the Bible was a result of divine authority. In the 1500s, this was called heresy, and one could be put to death for such a crime. So these were very serious matters at the time. Another area where science and religion have conflicted has been biology. Biology, in a sense, in terms of implications, have removed humankind, man, as the king, essentially, of the animal world. This is best illustrated when Charles Darwin, in the 19th century, suggested all life evolved from a common ancestor. The religious view up until this point was that life was a result of separate acts of divine creation. The implications of the scientific perspective mean, one, that humankind is not the center of things, and rather humankind is only one of countless living things that have been spawned by the evolutionary process. And just to discuss very briefly what is meant by evolutionary process. Evolution is not just one process. Evolution consists of several processes. One of these is random variations. The idea that offsprings of plants and animals are never exactly alike, but they vary in some way from generation to generation. Another idea important here is natural selection. This is also part of evolution. That because of these changes, variations from one generation to the next, a fortunate few survive because those variations make them better able to adapt in competition for life in a changing world. And because of these random variations, it results in an altered genetic makeup of species. Favorable variations, then, tend to be preserved and passed on to the next generation, while unfavorable variations tend to be destroyed. The process, then, is natural because there's no need for a divine activity in order for development to take place. According to the evolutionary theory, then, adaptation is a result of nature, the struggle for existence, rather than divine wisdom. Another area where science and religion have conflicted have been archaeology. Archaeology contradicts the biblical view of primordial times and discovery of artifacts older than the time of Genesis. For a long time, the Bible was considered the only evidence of any kind of pre-Greek world. Scientific discoveries, on the other hand, have contradicted biblical chronology. Biblical chronology dates the creation of Adam at roughly 4000 BC. However, excavations have uncovered remains of prehistoric civilizations dating back to 500,000 years. European cave art found in Germany and France dates back to 10,000 to 20,000 years, so this contradicts a biblical explanation of history. Additionally, even more recent studies, excavations of the Sinai Peninsula have found no evidence that large numbers of people, such as Moses' tribe, crossed the Sinai period during the time of Exodus. Now, important to keep in mind as scientists, lack of evidence is not evidence of absence. Just because archaeological evidence hasn't been found doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It could still be there. It simply means it hasn't been found with respect to the Sinai Peninsula. So keep that in mind. Geology is another area. Geology refers to the study of rock formations and the fossils that are found in rock formations. It takes into account the role of natural catastrophes such as floods, meteorite bombardments, volcanic activity, tectonic plate shifts, earthquakes. Geology also casts doubt as whether humankind is as old as primordial times. Genesis depicts man as having been created less than a week after the beginning of the universe. This view would have to accept mankind as being as old as the plants and animals, rocks, and mountains. However, geology indicates the Earth is the result of continuing geological processes that can last billions of years and have lasted billions of years. It indicates that humankind is, in terms of the lifespan of the Earth, relative newcomers to Earth's history. Humankind is believed to have originated between 1 and 2 million years ago. However, geological evidence of life on Earth goes back over 3 billion years, and the universe itself may be over 20 billion years old. Another area where they've conflicted has been scientific study of Scripture. This refers to critical analysis of biblical texts. The implications are that it questions who was the author of the Bible. It questions the authority, trustworthiness of the Bible. Textual criticism, for example, seeks to determine what were the words of the original author. And this is very difficult to do because in many cases we have copies of copies of copies of copies that have been translated from one language to another, to another, to another, further complicated by the fact that it's taken place over hundreds, thousands of years where language has changed and meaning have changed. The oldest versions of the Bible, or what I would call in the Jewish tradition, the Torah, are the Dead Sea Scrolls of roughly 100 to 200 BC. Problem is that no two Dead Sea biblical manuscripts, no two of those Torahs are worded exactly the same. This has led to critics saying that if a deity were to inspire human authors to write a manuscript, that deity would also inspire them to copy the originals without errors. In any event, the purpose of this discussion is just to give you a sense of how science and religion have conflicted over time, set a larger social context for what we look at this week, in particular the Enlightenment. But keep in mind, as I go through this, I don't want any of you to get the impression that I'm trying to disprove religion or deity or something greater than ourselves. That's not my intent or meaning at all. I don't think it is incompatible to be a religious person and a scientist at the same time. The two are not mutually exclusive. But we do have to be aware of how science has shed light on our origins and the origins of the universe. Just something to keep in mind. All right, as usual, you know where to find me if you have any questions. Always glad to speak with you. Have a good week, everyone.